That's the driver for world champion. Amazing.
Legend. I like that. I like that.
This is quite the way to end what has been such a dramatic 2024 from both the drama standpoint to the beautiful racing we've had in 24. I can't remember a GP from Japan GP onwards that has been bad. It's all been amazing, super fun to watch, and just overall entertaining. What a season in comparison to that of 2023. 2024 has delivered on every single level for pretty much every single team. I think every fan could have enjoyed some moment in this season. And for the last time, let's cover this race. Thank you all for 2024. This season has just been absolutely incredible, and you guys mean the world. Let's get started with this race review of the Abu Dhabi 2024 GP. We have a lot to go over and a lot of drivers to talk about. Getting started, obviously, the main talking point going into this GP was McLaren versus Ferrari. And with Leclerc starting in the back, I think the chances of this happening and actually being close was pretty much none. So the expectations were very low coming into the first lap in Abu Dhabi. But Leclerc's hopes were set high. He said, as long as it's possible, I still have belief. And man, did this guy make us believe in that first lap. Now, with the help of Max Verstappen making what I would say is probably one of his worst moves in the past 3 to 4 years, this was not a very Max Verstappen-like move. Going down the inside was not even close to far along with Piastri, who also gave him space even though he really shouldn't have been giving him space. And it ends up putting Piastri at the back of the grid and himself, giving himself a 10-second penalty. This contact actually helped Leclerc make up some positions, and it set up a lot of drivers to make a lot of places in this first lap. But where this really got interesting was into turn 6. When watching from Leclerc's POV, this is actually insane, the amount of overtakes that he makes. He goes from P19 to P8 in a matter of 7 corners. It's absolutely insane. And this is the most positions Leclerc's ever made up in a GP, by the end of it being 16. Just absolutely crazy. What a drive. And just being there at the perfect time. Good job from Charles. Sadly, Checo gets pinged out right in the beginning. Who you can put the blame on, I'm not really sure. Bottas was kind of squeezed out. He didn't really have too much to do in this spot. Ends up spinning out Checo, and then his drive is pretty much gone. And quite a downbeat Checo. It's possible this could be his very last drive. It's been a very painful season for both Checo fans and himself. So if this is his last drive, I very much appreciated him as a driver. It's just unfortunate that this Red Bull never really worked for him. This put out a virtual safety car in the beginning, but by lap 7, we ended up having Lando in the lead. Carlos was about 3 seconds behind. You could tell that the McLaren was much quicker. Gasly in P3 was actually keeping Russell behind. Hulk in P5. Alonso also ended up having a very good start in P6, catching Hulk most of the time in this beginning stint. K-Mag in P7, another great start. Leclerc in P8, just ridiculous. Max in P9 somehow after spinning out. He ended up still controlling the car, funny enough. And Lance in P10, but Lewis had a pretty decent start in P12 on the hard tires, where we knew throughout the race he was going to start catching up. But then rewinding back to lap 1 again, an incident that's not being talked about a lot is Oscar running into the back of Colapinto, and he was given a 10-second penalty for this. When I was watching live, I thought that actually Colapinto made a late move, and the reason why Oscar went into him was because of the late move by Colapinto. I didn't really feel like this was Oscar's fault. It was more on Colapinto, but I guess it's up for debate and it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Leclerc was roaring up by lap 15 and was in P5, starting in P19 on lap 1. So in 13 laps, he has made up 14 positions. There were constant battles throughout the midfield. Alpine was obviously trying to retain the highest position possible. Hulk was very close. The Haas car and the Alpine car were pretty much even in pace. I would say the Aston was pretty much even as well. It was very close amongst all of these drivers, but whoever had the lead, the dirty air was very strong here, and that did not help a lot of drivers when trying to go for overtakes. Leclerc finally ends up actually pitting on lap 21. Very important pit stop. And what a first stint by Leclerc. Then some other crucial moments in the Constructors' title. On lap 26, that's when Carlos ends up pitting. On 27, that is when Lando ends up pitting to hold behind Carlos, who ended up actually making up about a second and a half. but it just wasn't enough. This McLaren was very fast, and I gotta say, this is probably Lando's best drive of the season. No flaws, was just perfect out there. Gotta give him massive props. Not really being talked about from what I see, mainly because they obviously have the fastest car, but it took a lot of control and he did an amazing job. Colapinto's F1 adventure is unfortunately over with him going into the garage on lap 28. I'm not sure if he finished the last 3 GPs. It would not been a great last triple header for him. He did finish in Vegas, but Vegas ended up having a qualifying crash. Colapinto is definitely a talent. We got to see him back in a Formula 1 car, I think, at some point, but these last couple races definitely aren't going to go down very great with the teams. Another really unfortunate and weird crash is Bottas going into the Viking. The Dane himself, Kevin Magnussen, was probably on for some points, whether that's a P10 or P9 position. So unfortunate. If you guys know, K-Mag is one of my favorite drivers. It sucked seeing this, honestly. Very sad to not see him finish in the points. He was super quick, especially in that lap 1. Unfortunate, and what a weird lockup by Bottas. I've never really seen this. He was already slowing down. The car just was not getting completely down to pace, probably from the overheating in the brake ducts on the front tires, and this ends up happening. Unfortunate, and pretty much screws over the race for both of them. But Lewis ends up staying out till lap 35, getting into the pits, going on to mediums. This is when we start seeing that blistering race pace. I mean, you can say all you want about his qualifying pace. His race pace is probably the best on the grid. It's up there with Max, it's up there with Alonso, it's up there with Leclerc, it's up there with Lando. All those guys in the race, I mean, Lewis is just a master. It really doesn't matter where you put him. He's going to finish somewhere high up, always because of his race pace and his experience. So by lap 40, just to give you guys an idea, Norris was first, Carlos was second, third was Leclerc, fourth was Russell, fifth Gasly, sixth Hülkenberg. Quite impressive positions by those two. Lewis ended up being P7 on freshly fitted mediums. Verstappen P8. Albon holding it up in P9. They went for a classic Williams strategy there. P10 for Guan Yu Zhou, and then the rest down. As I said, with those freshly pitted mediums, we were seeing overtake after overtake with Lewis. Very impressive. Gets past Gasly up to P5. Now he's got to catch his teammate George Russell, who's been out on those hards for a pretty decent amount of time. Flying in his last laps in 2024 in that Mercedes, it is quite emotional to see this guy finish off what has been probably the most historic run with a driver and team pairing. It will be weird, but also very sick to see him in a Ferrari suit. Just that red will be very fitting on Lewis in 2025. Lando is a decent amount ahead, and we know what's going to end up happening. There is no chance here for Ferrari. Unfortunately, Leclerc did everything he could. So did Carlos. I got to give both those guys props. I wish there was a little bit more pace in that Ferrari to be a closer contention, but Lando was flawless. And Lewis is now in DRS range by lap 57, trying to go for it on the very last lap. On lap 58, Lewis makes an amazing move on the outside. Yes, he had the fresh rubber, but he made it stick when he needed to. Hammer time was definitely put in for Lewis Hamilton's very last stint as a Mercedes driver in 2024. McLaren are Constructors champions. Well done to the McLaren team. It has been a very long time and super well deserved, I might add. They had an incredible season. We can talk about all the flaws, but at the very end of the day, they're P1, and that car was flying. They've done really well. You guys got to remember, in 2023, they were P10 in the Constructors. They were the slowest car. They sucked. And now, they're literally the fastest car going to 2025, probably the favorites. We get a couple of donuts from Lewis. We get him touching the car, and we can see a very emotional legend say his farewells to the Mercedes team. I mean, it's made me emotional. Nico Rosberg talks about it. I love what Nico actually has to say as well.
Even for me, it's emotional to watch this, yeah? Because of course I witnessed it from so close, and it's the greatest partnership in Formula One history, driver-team partnership. Crazy that it's coming to an end.
And what a race. I really got to give it up to Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi typically for me is a big nap, honestly. Sometimes it's a very early race for me, and it really doesn't deliver. It's not my favorite track, but today it delivered in every type of fashion. I'm very sad to also be seeing Carlos and Charles not on a team anymore. This is definitely my favorite driver pairing. They're also a very close driver pairing when it comes to their personalities and who they are. I really thought that these guys just worked so well together, and I thought they were pretty much perfect. Like, I can't name another pairing that's as good as these two put together. What a day for Formula One fans, and in general, what a season 2024 has been. Wow. No more Bottas, no more Guan Yu Zhou, no more Kevin Magnussen. Carlos is not going to be in a Ferrari. We're going to see him in a Williams very soon. Lewis not in a Mercedes. It's been quite the season and quite the drama around it. I'm really excited for 2025. I really want to see what ends up happening at this Red Bull seat. It's possible Checo's not going to have a seat anymore either. So much to cover. Stay tuned. I got a lot of off-season content I'm going to be making. Don't worry about that. I think time's going to fly by the time we end up actually getting to February. We end up getting the reveal of the cars and everything. It's going to be quick. I wouldn't be shocked that this is going to fly by. But I will say, even if it's a long season, I'm definitely going to miss quite the competitive 2024. Well done to every single team. And thank you guys for supporting the channel. If you made it to the end of the video, please give it a like, subscribe. It would mean the world. And peace.